I was seconds away from death when the ship lost control. Oxygen dropping, alarms screaming, and in that chaos, I called out to someone I had stopped believing in. My name is Eris. This is my story. This story is inspired by true events. It's told with deep respect for all faiths and meant only to share one man's journey toward finding peace in Islam. From which country are you watching this video? Subscribe to this channel if you love Islam. They say space changes people. They were right. I used to think I understood silence. But silence on Earth is just the absence of noise. The silence up here, beyond the clouds, beyond air, beyond home, is something else. It's alive. It listens. I was trained to be rational, calm, efficient. Every movement, every checklist, every heartbeat measured. When the engines roared, I felt the same thrill I'd chased since childhood, the power of leaving gravity behind. I told myself this was purpose, to conquer the stars, to look down on the world and call it small. But after the noise faded, after the ground control chatter dissolved into static, only the breathing remained mine, heavy and close inside the helmet. There's something unnerving about hearing your own heartbeat echo through a machine. It makes you realize how fragile the human body really is, how dependent it is on air, on warmth, on hope. I looked out the window. The earth hung beneath me like a living jewel. Blue veins of ocean, soft clouds glowing with sunlight. It looked peaceful, almost too peaceful. And for the first time, I wondered, what keeps it all from falling apart? Mission Day, 27. Everything was stable, systems nominal. My partner was asleep in his capsule, and I was logging data about solar radiation. The hum of the ship was constant, mechanical, comforting in its predictability. Then the hum skipped, just once, like a heartbeat missed. I frowned, checked the monitors. Oxygen pressure, fine. Reactor output, steady. External sensors, clear. Still, something felt off. A subtle tremor beneath my seat. A vibration too human for a machine. When you've spent weeks in orbit, your senses sharpen. You begin to feel every whisper of motion. Every sound becomes a language. And that night, the ship whispered something I didn't want to translate. Hours later, it happened. A sudden jolt threw me against the harness. Warning lights flared red, merciless. The reactor temperature was spiking. The navigation system screamed in code I'd never heard before. My earpiece filled with static. Ground control was gone. I remember shouting into the comms, "Houston, come in! I've lost main thrust system malfunction, rebooting manual control." No answer. Another flash. The cabin filled with acrid smoke and burning metal. I could taste electricity, sharp as blood. The ship spun violently. Earth and stars turned into a blur of light. I tried to remember protocol. Breathe slowly, they said in training. Trust your instruments. But what if the instruments were lying? What if the machine that carried your life simply gave up? The oxygen alarm blared. My vision pulsed. I was upside down, then sideways, then nowhere. My partner's capsule had gone dark. I tried to reach him, but my arms felt heavy, like gravity had found me again. That's when the fear arrived pure, wordless, ancient. And for the first time in years, I spoke to someone I wasn't sure existed. "Please," I gasped, not even sure who I was speaking to. "If anyone, if anything is out there, Don't let me die like this." The words felt strange in my mouth, like they belonged to another lifetime. But once they left, I couldn't stop them. "Please, help me. I don't want to die here. Not in the dark. Not alone." The alarms wailed, lights flickered, and then suddenly everything went quiet. Not the silence of death, a deeper kind of quiet, the kind that wraps around you like something holding its breath. My body stopped shaking. My heart slowed. I looked out the viewport, expecting nothing, and saw something I can't describe. A faint glow, not from the sun, not from any star I knew. It moved with me, gentle, steady, as if guiding the ship's spin back into balance. The controls flickered back to life, power restored, temperature falling. I remember whispering, "How?" But there was no answer, just that same quiet presence, like a hand on my shoulder saying, "You're not alone." Within minutes, the ship stabilized. My partner's capsule lights flickered on again. He groaned, dazed but alive. "What happened?" he asked. I wanted to tell him everything. The prayer, the light, the peace that came when logic failed me. But the words stuck in my throat. "Just a malfunction," I said instead. He believed me. Mission reports would later call it a temporary reactor anomaly. I signed off on the report. I even helped write it. But deep down, I knew what I had felt wasn't in any manual. That night, as the others slept, I floated near the window and stared at the curve of the Earth again. I tried to replay the sequence, to rationalize the impossible. My mind listed possibilities: magnetic interference, sensor glitch, autopilot redundancy. But none of those explanations could explain the stillness. In that moment between death and life, I had felt seen. Not by the world below, not by the crew, not by any system or satellite, by something far greater. I thought of the words that slipped from my mouth during the chaos. "Please help me." I hadn't said them in decades, not since I was a child whispering to the ceiling when nightmares came. Why did they return now, here, in the black? I stayed by the window until dawn came, not the dawn of Earth, but the thin golden line that rises over the horizon every 90 minutes up here. It reminded me of mercy, how it arrives quietly, even in places that don't deserve it. When I finally returned to my bunk, I couldn't sleep. My body was weightless, but my heart was heavy. Something had answered me out there. And I couldn't stop wondering, who? The next morning, I logged a simple note into my private system journal. Reactor stabilized unexpectedly. Cause unknown. But beneath that line, in smaller text words I didn't want anyone to read, I typed, "There was peace in the silence. Maybe someone heard me." I floated in the capsule, watching the sun rise and fall over Earth again and again. The blue turned gold, the gold to night, and the night to blue once more. Each orbit felt like a heartbeat. Before sleep, I found myself whispering again. No rehearsed prayer, no creed, just a quiet gratitude that came from somewhere deeper than fear. "Thank you," I said softly. I didn't know who I was thanking, but I meant it. I didn't know then that this was only the beginning, that when I returned to Earth, I'd spend sleepless nights chasing that silence, trying to name the peace that found me among the stars, and that one day, a stranger, a man of faith, would give me the answer I had been orbiting my whole life. They said I should be happy to be alive. I smiled for the cameras, nodded through the debriefs, signed autographs for the newspapers that called me the man who escaped death in orbit. But when the applause faded, the noise of Earth was unbearable. The hum of the refrigerator, the chatter of traffic, the endless interviews, they all felt like static compared to the stillness I'd met among the stars. NASA's doctors said I was experiencing post-mission disorientation. Maybe, but I knew what I had felt wasn't a hallucination. It had weight, gentleness, intention. Every night I replayed it, the moment the ship spun, the way everything stilled when I prayed. My mind called it coincidence. My heart called it something else. Sleep became a negotiation. Some nights I dream of drifting again, weightless, peaceful, then falling. Falling until a voice whispered, "You're not alone." I'd wake, gasping, my hands trembling as if still gripping invisible controls. I tried to drown it in logic. I read physics papers until dawn, searched for explanations in electromagnetic anomalies and quantum theories of consciousness. Nothing fit. Weeks later, during a university lecture, a student asked me what the most beautiful thing in space was. I almost said Earth. Instead, I said silence. The hall went quiet. They thought I was being poetic. One afternoon, I wandered into a small cafe near the Space Center. Rain tapped the windows. The world felt heavy and clean. An old man sat at the corner table, a cup of tea before him, reading a book in Arabic script. Something about his calm drew me in the same calm I'd felt in the capsule after the explosion. He noticed me looking, smiled. "You seem far away, my son," I laughed softly. "You have no idea." He gestured to the chair across from him. "Then come closer." We talked at first about trivial things, science, travel, how tea tastes better in silence. Then he asked, "Have you ever been truly alone?" I told him about space, about the silence, about the moment everything should have ended. He listened without interrupting, eyes kind, steady. When I finished, I said, "No one believes me, not even me." He smiled. "You prayed, didn't you?" I froze. I hadn't told him that. "How did you?" He raised a hand gently. When a soul calls sincerely, the world remembers the sound. Something in me cracked. He told me he was an ustad from a small masjid nearby. His name was Yusuf. "I've met many who believe in stars," he said, "but the one who made the stars, he's the reason you're still breathing." I wanted to argue, to retreat into equations, but my mouth betrayed me. "Then why me? I'm no believer." He nodded. "Because mercy isn't a reward, it's an invitation." Those words lodged deep inside me. An invitation. Something I had not earned, yet had been given. We met again days later. He brought me a Quran, an English translation, worn at the edges. "I don't expect you to believe," he said. "Just read. Start with this verse." He pointed to the page. "And he found you lost and guided you." Surah Ad-Duha, 93-7. My chest tightened. Lost, guided. The words felt too precise to be coincidence. I remembered the light in the darkness of space. I whispered, "Is that what happened to me?" He smiled. "It always is." That night I read more. Slowly, haltingly. Each verse felt like oxygen returning to a place I didn't know was suffocating. It spoke of mercy that precedes asking, of patience that outlasts despair, of a creator nearer than the jugular vein. And for the first time, I didn't feel small in the universe. I felt seen. I began visiting the masjid quietly, sitting in the back while others prayed. The rhythm of their voices was familiar, like the heartbeat of the ship before it failed, steady and surrendering. No grandeur, no performance, just human beings bowing to the source of calm I had met in orbit. One evening I asked Yusuf, "When you prostrate, what do you feel?" He said, "Home. Israelite today." The word echoed for days. Home. I had traveled beyond Earth, searching for wonder, yet I'd never known where I truly belonged. Weeks passed. One dawn, the call to prayer floated through my open window, soft, unhurried. The same calm that had steadied my ship filled the room. Without planning to, I whispered the words I'd learned from Yusuf. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. I bear witness there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. Tears came without permission. It wasn't conversion. It was returning to the voice that had answered me between the stars. When I told Yusuf, he simply smiled and said, "Alhamdulillah, you were never lost, Aris. You were just being guided in a longer orbit." Now, when I look up at the night sky, I don't see emptiness. I see ayat signs, each one a reminder that distance is only an illusion. The same Lord who held my ship, steady, holds my heart steady now. And every time I bow my head in prayer, I remember that moment in the capsule, the silence that spoke back, the mercy that answered my fear. Because I know now, it wasn't silence at all. It was Allah guiding me home. The day I said the Shahada, everything was quiet. No fireworks, no applause, just calm, like space again. But this time, the silence didn't scare me. It embraced me. At first, I tried to hide it. The world that celebrated me as an astronaut didn't understand faith, not the kind that asked you to bow. So I prayed in secret between meetings, in corners of hotel rooms, on conference layovers. Each prayer felt like stepping through a hidden door back into the peace that had saved me. Still, the questions came. How can you believe in something you can't measure? How can a man of science accept miracles? They meant no harm, but every question echoed the one I had asked myself 1,000 times. One evening I sat with Ustad Yusuf again. "My colleagues think I've lost my logic," I said. He smiled. "No, you've just stopped worshiping it." Then he quoted a verse I hadn't heard before. "We will show them our signs in the horizons and within themselves until it becomes clear to them that it is the truth." Surah Fusilat 41-53. It hit me, the horizons. That was my whole life, studying the horizons of space, yet missing the signs written across them. Learning Islam wasn't easy. Arabic words tangled on my tongue. My knees ached in sujood. My mind, trained to prove everything, now had to learn to trust. But every Allahu Akbar felt like a new heartbeat. Every verse recited was an echo of that first prayer I whispered in terror. Sometimes, during Fajr, I'd stand by the window watching the stars fade. The same stars I once called dead light now felt alive witnesses to mercy. I began to see physics and faith not as rivals, but as mirrors. The more I studied the cosmos, the clearer I saw the order behind it. And the more I prayed, the more I understood why order exists at all. Months later, an unexpected message arrived. NASA Mission Reassignment Inquiry. They wanted me to train for a new flight. I stared at the screen for a long time. A part of me feared returning to that silence, to the place where I almost died. But another part, the part that now bowed 5 times a day, whispered, maybe that's where you were meant to pray again. Training was different this time. Before, I had felt like a master of technology. Now, I felt like a guest. I carried a small prayer mat in my bag. I recited Bismillah before every simulation. Even the launch countdown felt like dhikr. Each number, a reminder of who controlled the ignition. When we finally reached orbit, the Earth appeared again, the same blue jewel. But I wasn't looking for proof anymore. I was looking for gratitude. During one rotation, when the others were asleep, I unrolled the small prayer mat, anchored it to the floor, and faced the curvature of the Earth, the Qibla that never stopped moving. I said Allahu Akbar, and the entire universe seemed to echo it back. In sujood, I felt the same peace that had once steadied my ship. But now I understood. It wasn't coincidence. It wasn't luck. It was guidance. The stars outside the window looked like verses written in light, every atom humming in obedience, every orbit a prostration in motion. I whispered, "You guided me through the dark once. Let me live this light until you call me home." For the first time, space didn't feel empty. It felt full of remembrance. When I returned to Earth, the reporters asked, "Did you see God out there?" I smiled. "No," I said, "but I saw his signs everywhere." They didn't understand, but that was okay. Not everything sacred fits into sound bites. Now I spend my days teaching not just physics, but wonder. I tell my students, if you want to study the stars, start with gratitude, because every orbit, every formula, every breath, they all move under the same command. Sometimes, when the night is clear, I still step outside and look up. The silence greets me like an old friend. And somewhere beyond the horizon, I imagine the ship that almost ended my life, still circling, still shining, still reminding me that the one who created the galaxies also hears a single whisper from a frightened man in the dark. I used to think space made me feel small. Now it makes me feel known. And that is enough. After I returned from my second mission, my life split in two. There was Eris, the astronaut, the public figure, the scientist, the man the world admired. And there was Eris, the believer, quiet, content, whispering Alhamdulillah before every breath. Reporters called me the astronaut who found God. Some wanted proof, others wanted spectacle. But how do you prove something that speaks in silence? I learned to smile and say, "I didn't find God, He found me," is less than Hashon number. I began visiting universities, sharing what space had taught me, not just about physics, but about awe. Students asked about black holes, galaxies, the edge of the universe. And I would tell them, every law we discover is only a leaf from His garden. Sometimes they'd fall silent, as if tasting those words for the first time. But not everyone understood. Some called me delusional. Others said I had turned my back on reason. And for a while, their voices hurt. Until one night, after a lecture in Istanbul, an old man approached me. He took my hand and said, "My son, don't worry. Even the prophet faced disbelief, yet he kept speaking the truth with mercy." Mercy, that word again. The same one that held my ship steady. The same one that softened my heart. Years passed. I married. I had children. and every time I looked into their faces, I saw what I had once seen from orbit, the miracle of life held together by something unseen. I built a small observatory behind our house, not for research, but for reflection. Sometimes I'd bring my children there after Maghrib. We'd sit under the open dome, watching the stars bloom like prayers in the dark. "Baba," my daughter once asked, "are the stars alive?" I smiled. "In their own way, yes. They're alive in obedience." She tilted her head. "What does that mean?" "It means they never forget who told them to shine." My fame faded eventually. That's the way of all things, even stars burn out. But peace never left. I still wake before dawn. I still whisper the same words that saved me in orbit. "Ya Allah, guide me." Only now, I add, and keep me guided. The truth is, guidance isn't a one-time miracle. It's a daily choice, a gentle turning of the heart toward the light. And every prayer, every act of patience, every moment of gratitude is another orbit around His mercy. One evening, long after my hair had turned white, I was invited to speak at a youth camp. The last question came from a quiet boy at the back. He asked, "Sir, what was the most beautiful thing you saw in space?" The room waited for me to say Earth or the stars, but I said, "The most beautiful thing I saw was surrender, because when I finally stopped trying to control everything, that's when I found everything." Now, when I pray, I still imagine that endless view of Earth, turning below billions of souls, moving through their own orbits of joy and struggle, each one a reflection of divine mercy. And I realize Allah didn't just guide me home to Earth. He guided me to myself, to the part of me that could finally say La ilaha illallah with peace instead of pride. Sometimes, I still wake before dawn and step outside. The world is dark, the air cold against my skin. I look up, and there they are, the same stars, the same silence. They don't scare me anymore. They remind me. That night in orbit, when everything should have ended, I called out to the unknown, and the unknown called me back by name. Now, every Allahu Akbar feels like that same call echoing through the galaxies. Every prostration feels like touching the floor of creation, reminding me that no matter how far I've traveled, the closest place to God was never out there. It was here, inside the heart, that finally learned how to bow. And maybe that's what being guided home really means, not returning to Earth, but returning to the one who made it. So I stand beneath the sky, and I whisper into the same silence that once terrified me. Ya Allah, thank you for finding me in the dark.